My ex-wife remarried for money, then tried to get alimony from me too. The judge's reaction was worth recording. Let me start by saying that divorce is never simple, but what happened to me was beyond anything I could have imagined. After 15 years of marriage, my wife decided she wanted out, claiming we had grown apart and that she needed to find herself. The whole process was messy, expensive, and emotionally draining, but I thought once the papers were signed, I could finally move on with my life. The divorce settlement wasn't too bad considering how these things usually go. I agreed to pay modest alimony for 3 years, which seemed fair since she had been out of the workforce for a while raising our kids. The house was sold, assets were divided, and we established a custody arrangement that worked for everyone involved. I rented a small apartment across town and tried to rebuild my life from scratch. What really stung was watching her immediately start dating this wealthy guy she had apparently met through mutual friends. Within 6 months of our divorce being finalized, she was posting pictures of expensive vacations, designer clothes, and fancy restaurants all over social media. It was like she had transformed into a completely different person overnight, someone who cared more about appearances than the family we had built together. The kids would come back from visits with stories about their mom's new boyfriend and his massive house with a pool, multiple cars, and all the latest gadgets. I tried not to let it bother me, but it was hard not to feel like I had been replaced by someone who could provide all the things I never could. My modest income and simple lifestyle suddenly felt inadequate in comparison. 18 months after our divorce, she called me with news that she was getting remarried. The wedding was going to be a small ceremony, but she wanted to let me know so the kids could prepare for having a stepfather. I wished her well and meant it, hoping that maybe now she would find the happiness she claimed to be searching for when she left me. The new husband was everything I wasn't: successful in business, well-connected socially, and apparently wealthy enough to support the lifestyle she had always wanted. They bought a house in one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in the city, complete with a 3-car garage and a backyard that looked like something out of a magazine. My kids were impressed, and I had to admit that part of me was relieved knowing they would be well taken care of. About 6 months into her new marriage, something strange started happening. She began reaching out to me more frequently, not about the kids or practical matters, but just to chat about random things. At first, I thought maybe she was trying to maintain a friendly relationship for the sake of our children, which I appreciated. But the conversations started getting more personal, and she would sometimes complain about her new husband's work schedule or his family. Then came the phone call that changed everything. She was crying, which was unusual because she had always been the type to keep her emotions in check. She told me that her new marriage wasn't working out the way she had hoped, that her husband was controlling and demanding, and that she was miserable. I listened and offered support, thinking maybe we could finally have the mature, post-divorce relationship that would be best for everyone. What she said next completely blindsided me. She asked if I would consider taking her back, saying that she had made a terrible mistake and that she realized I had been the one who truly loved her all along. Part of me wanted to believe her, but something about the timing and the way she said it made me suspicious. I told her I needed time to think about it, but deep down, I knew that ship had sailed. A few weeks later, I discovered the real reason behind her sudden change of heart. Through mutual friends, I learned that her new husband had lost a significant amount of money in a business deal gone wrong. They were facing financial difficulties, and the luxurious lifestyle she had become accustomed to was about to disappear. Suddenly, her tears and declarations of love made perfect sense. I decided not to pursue getting back together, and she seemed to accept that decision relatively well. But then, about a month later, I received legal documents that made my blood boil. She was taking me back to court, claiming that her circumstances had changed and that she needed the alimony payments to be reinstated and increased. The papers stated that she was now in financial distress and that I had a continuing obligation to support her. The audacity of it all was staggering. She had left me, married someone wealthy, lived it up for over a year, and now that her meal ticket was running out, she wanted to come back to me for money. Not for love, not for reconciliation, but purely for financial support. I felt like I was being treated like a backup plan, someone she could turn to whenever her other options fell through. My lawyer was just as shocked as I was when I showed him the documents. He explained that in some states, alimony can be modified if circumstances change significantly, but this situation was particularly unusual. The fact that she had remarried and then sought additional support from her previous husband was not something he had encountered very often in his practice. We filed our response, arguing that she had forfeited any right to alimony when she remarried, and that her current financial difficulties were not my responsibility. I provided evidence of her lavish lifestyle during her second marriage, including social media posts and credit card statements that showed expensive purchases and vacations. It was clear that she had not been living modestly or trying to become self-sufficient. The weeks leading up to the court date were incredibly stressful. I kept thinking about how unfair the whole situation was, how she had used me as a safety net while pursuing what she thought would be a better life. The idea that she could just bounce back and forth between husbands, depending on which one could provide more money, was infuriating and demoralizing. When the day finally arrived, I was nervous but determined to fight for what I believed was right. The courthouse was busy, filled with people dealing with their own legal battles, and I couldn't help but wonder how many of them were going through similar situations. Divorce and family law seemed to bring out both the best and worst in people. My ex-wife arrived with her lawyer, looking much more subdued than the confident woman I had seen in all those social media posts. She avoided eye contact with me, which was probably for the best since I was still processing all the anger and disappointment I felt about being manipulated. Her lawyer seemed confident, but I could tell they were going to have a tough time explaining why she deserved money from two different men. The judge was a middle-aged woman who had clearly seen it all before. She listened patiently as both sides presented their arguments, occasionally asking pointed questions that made it clear she understood the complexities of the situation. When my ex-wife's lawyer finished presenting their case, the judge's expression was unreadable, but I could sense that she was not impressed with what she had heard. Then came the moment that made all the stress and legal fees worth it. The judge looked directly at my ex-wife and asked her to explain why she believed she was entitled to alimony from her first husband while married to her second husband. The question was simple, but the implications were devastating to her case. My ex-wife stumbled through an answer about changed circumstances and financial hardship, but the judge was not buying it. She pointed out that remarriage typically terminates alimony obligations, and that choosing to marry someone who later experiences financial difficulties does not create a renewed obligation from a previous spouse. The logic was clear and undeniable. But the judge wasn't finished. She went on to say that the court system was not designed to provide financial insurance for people who make poor relationship choices, and that expecting support from multiple sources simultaneously was not only unreasonable but potentially fraudulent. The words hung in the air like a judgment that went far beyond just the legal case. The most satisfying moment came when the judge denied the request for renewed alimony and ordered my ex-wife to pay my legal fees. She explained that frivolous lawsuits waste court resources and that there should be consequences for attempting to manipulate the system. I had to suppress a smile as I watched my ex-wife's face turn red with embarrassment and anger. As we left the courthouse, my ex-wife tried to approach me, probably to apologize or explain herself, but I kept walking. There was nothing left to say between us except what was necessary for co-parenting our children. The woman who had once been my partner in life had become a stranger willing to exploit our past relationship for financial gain. The whole experience taught me valuable lessons about trust, relationships, and the importance of standing up for yourself when someone tries to take advantage of you. I realized that some people view others as resources to be exploited rather than human beings deserving of respect and honesty. It was a painful but necessary education in the realities of human nature. In the months that followed, I focused on rebuilding my relationship with my kids and creating a stable, loving environment for them when they were with me. They never asked about the court case, but I could tell they sensed the tension between their parents had increased. I tried to shield them from the adult drama while still being honest about the fact that their mom and I had different values and priorities. My ex-wife eventually got back on her feet financially, though not through any help from me. She found work and downsized her living situation, learning to live within her means for probably the first time in her adult life. Her second marriage survived the financial crisis, though I heard through the grapevine that it was rocky for a while. The experience changed how I approach relationships and taught me to pay attention to red flags that I had ignored during my marriage. I realized that my ex-wife had always been somewhat opportunistic, but I had explained away her behavior as ambition or practicality. Looking back, I could see a pattern of decisions based primarily on personal benefit rather than love or commitment. These days, I'm more cautious about dating and much more aware of people's motivations. I've learned to distinguish between someone who genuinely cares about me and someone who sees me as a means to an end. It's made me a better judge of character and helped me avoid repeating the same mistakes that led to my divorce. The legal victory was satisfying, but the real win was gaining clarity about who my ex-wife really was and what our marriage had actually meant to her. It hurt to realize that I had been living with an illusion for so many years, but it was also liberating to finally understand the truth. Sometimes the most painful revelations are also the most necessary for moving forward. I still have moments of anger when I think about how she tried to manipulate me, but mostly I feel grateful that the judge saw through her scheme and protected me from being exploited. The whole experience reminded me that the legal system, while imperfect, can sometimes deliver real justice when someone tries to abuse it for personal gain. My kids are older now and starting to understand more about adult relationships and the complexities of divorce. I've tried to be honest with them about the importance of integrity and treating others with respect, even when relationships don't work out. They've seen both good and bad examples of how adults handle conflict, and I hope they'll choose to be better people than what they've witnessed. The story became somewhat legendary among my friends and family, not because I was vindicated, but because it illustrated how far some people will go to avoid taking responsibility for their own choices. It served as a cautionary tale about the importance of really knowing someone before making major life commitments, and about the need to protect yourself legally in any significant relationship. Years later, I can look back on the whole experience with a mixture of sadness and gratitude. Sadness for the years I wasted in a marriage built on false pretenses, and gratitude for the lessons I learned about self-respect and the importance of standing up to people who try to take advantage of you. It was painful but ultimately educational in ways I never expected. The judge's reaction that day validated everything I had been feeling about the unfairness of the situation. Her clear, logical dismantling of my ex-wife's argument was better than any revenge I could have imagined. Sometimes the best outcome is simply having the truth acknowledged by an impartial authority who can see through the manipulation and lies. I'm in a much better place now, both emotionally and financially. The money I saved by not paying extended alimony helped me buy a small house where my kids can have their own rooms when they visit. It's not fancy, but it's ours, and it represents the stability and honesty that I want to model for them as they grow up. Looking back, I realized that my ex-wife's attempt to get alimony from both husbands was probably the best thing that could have happened to me. It removed any lingering doubts about whether I had made the right decision in not taking her back, and it gave me closure on a chapter of my life that had been filled with confusion and self-doubt. The whole experience taught me that sometimes people show you who they really are in moments of desperation, and you have to be willing to believe what you see rather than what you hope to be true. My ex-wife revealed her true priorities that day in court, and I was finally able to let go of any remaining feelings of guilt or regret about our divorce. These days, when people ask me about my divorce, I usually keep the details private, but occasionally I'll share the story about the alimony case as an example of how important it is to stand up for yourself when someone tries to take advantage of you. It's become a reminder that justice is possible, even when the situation seems hopeless. The recording I mentioned in my title wasn't an actual recording. Cell phones weren't allowed in the courtroom. But the judge's words are burned into my memory so clearly that I could probably recreate her entire speech word for word. Some moments are so significant that they become permanently etched in your mind, and that day in court was definitely one of them. In the end, my ex-wife's greed and manipulation backfired spectacularly, costing her more in legal fees than she would have received in alimony payments. But more importantly, it cost her any remaining respect I might have had for her as a person and as the mother of my children. Some bridges once burned can never be rebuilt.